decade ago who blew up on YouTube because they covered Enter Sandman. 3 sisters from Mexico. Pretty legit. Now, 10 years later, they're barely out of their teens. They were very young when they blew up. One of them's the drummer, one of them's the guitarist and the singer, and one of them plays the bass. Trio's called The Warning, and they're going to play the Agora on Wednesday night, September the 18th. And you can be there. AgoraCleveland.com. Want to look into the show. This pair for you would be caller 10. 216-578-1007 or 800-348-1007.
Pro tip, if a cop pulls you over and they hear you listening to this, they're probably just going to let you go. Because, you know, they figured you suffered enough.
10-4.
The Alan Cox Show.
On 100.7 WMMS.
Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in that election interference case. No cameras in that courtroom, of course, but they had obviously live coverage basically anywhere you look. They asked
anybody trying to break into the
I don't know
courthouse?
about that. It's mostly been stuff on the inside. I haven't seen anything on the outside, but obviously his lawyer stands up and immediately files a motion for an acquittal. And the judge goes, nope. Because I think before the jury went back to deliberate a couple of days ago, you know, your defense attorney stands up and says they want to file a motion for a mistrial or something like that. And if only one person had not been able to, you know, reach unanimity with all the other jurors, obviously, that would have been a mistrial or a hung jury. But I don't think anybody was looking for that to happen. It looked pretty black and white, the case that was laid out. So Trump, not shockingly at all, the first president in U.S. history to be convicted of a felony. It's all just gross, and it's all just so unfortunate. I mean, it's just, that's the understatement of the century, but it's, you know, and you always think of how these, in any criminal case, the attorneys who walk out with the losing client, their client loses, you got to walk out with these people. And they still got to get paid. You know what I mean?
Right.
In any case, well, civil or criminal, you know, in any case like that. You know, you're like, well, we tried to mount the best case we possibly could. Obviously, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The defense doesn't have to do anything. The jury has to deliberate as to whether or not the prosecution laid out their case beyond a shadow of a doubt. Defense doesn't have to do anything. They can cross-examine witnesses, things like that, but there's nothing that they really need to do. They could have put him on the stand. He said, of course, he wanted to do that. Of course, we all know he did not want to do that.
And the lawyers definitely did not want that.
No, and well, I don't think they care either way. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes down to it, he's their client, and they could recommend he not do that. I'm sure they were telling him what he wanted to hear, maybe. I don't know. I don't know anything about the inner goings-on there. But the evidence that was laid forth seemed pretty irrefutable. But again, you never know how these things are going to go. You don't know. And it didn't seem impossible that there would have been one Donald Trump sympathizer on the jury. One person who, come hell or high water, would have voted to acquit. Now, I don't know what happened in that jury room. There might have been somebody like that in there. There might have been somebody who had to be turned around, you know, during the course of this whole thing. And he's got multiple other cases that he still has to contend with. But, you know, they do these constant polls because pollsters need things to do. And they're always crowing about independent voters. I don't know what the hell that means. I can't imagine somebody who hasn't planted their flag by now one way or the other, but okay. People like to think of
just see how this all plays
Well,
out.
people like to think, I think people like to think of themselves as independent voters in the way that they go, well, nobody's going to tell me what to think. You know, Okay, but facts can actually, sway you. And so one of the statistics that was pretty consistent was that independent voters said that the outcome of this trial would absolutely sway them in a direction away from him. Now, that doesn't mean toward Joe Biden. It just means away from Trump. So who knows? But it's not going to sway anyone else. You could maybe buy, even though I don't really, you could maybe buy that an independent voter would really be looking at this and going, well, now I'm going to have to really think about this guy. Kick the tires a little bit harder on this. But there's nobody who's going to be swayed otherwise on either side, right? It's not going to matter a whit to Trump fans. It probably makes them love him more.
Right.
And it ain't going to matter to Biden fans. Because whatever.
Anyone but Trump.
It's got nothing to do with him. So, I don't know. Tonight will be an interesting night to watch cable news, though, I think. Alan, are you still allowed to run for president if you have a felony? You are. There are a lot of things, and that's kind of what's so frustrating in the current state of, there's a lot of people frustrated with the Supreme Court, which has unequivocally been corrupted to some degree on the right. The majority of that court has conflicts of interest that boggle the mind. But there are a lot of things, not only in our Constitution, but in the way that the government and the branches of government are run. There are so many things that aren't explicitly laid out. And that's what Trump has been so adept at exploiting. Things that just aren't specifically laid out. And there's been a number of occasions where he has had to hang his hopes on one or more of those things, despite being a moron and a traitor and now a convicted felon and all that stuff. It's a lot of it. Well, it's like when you're a kid and you go, well, you didn't say I couldn't do that, even though you know it's something that you're not supposed to do. Like when you were sitting in a car with a sibling and they'd be like, hey, he's touching me.
Right.
You go, no, I'm not. Your
your
finger, your finger at the tip of their nose.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Right. I'm not touching.
But you are aggravating.
Yeah. So the people who support Donald Trump would vote for him if he were in jail. I cannot see them giving him actual jail time. But I don't know. I don't know anything about it. And so, I don't know. But it is interesting. Obviously, there were a lot of people who were nervous that his electorally, his losing streak is pretty unbroken. But in everything else, the guy was dancing between the raindrops. So I know there are a lot of people that were pleased to see this verdict. So, there's a lot of questions that the electorate has. There's a lot of questions about, again, people have made up their mind as to which way they think this country should be run. And it's not a both sides thing. We're so far beyond that when you hear somebody try to both sides something, you laugh at them now. For a while, we were kind of in uncharted territory. But now when people do the whole both sides thing, they're laughed at. They're mocked. And rightfully so. Because it's so not a both sides thing. It's very clear it's not a both sides thing. How can you own a gun if you're a felon but can't... Wait, you can't own a gun if you're a felon, but you can run for president.
You don't need a gun to run for president, so.
Well, you might now. I don't know, but.
Ottawa is the capital city of Canada. Ottawa, good place. What a good city. Ottawa got a very good quality of life. Everybody who lives in Ottawa is very happy to be living in Ottawa. You got the Supreme Court, you got the Parliament Hill, you got a bunch
I was reading a thing this morning. You
Wait,
think
Alan, I got some breaking news.
Yeah.
Ottawa, a good capital city.
Trump said the whole trial was rigged.
Alan Cox Show. Exclusive news update.
That can't be right.
So it was rigged and disgraceful. So, like, what? Okay.
I mean, this guy's Ottawa sounds pretty good. Maybe you should go up there. Alan, where was the trial?
New York City.
In the most devious bastard.
You are the most devious bastard in New York City.
New York City.
I bet he's never even watched that show.
Oh, I love it. Anyway, you'd think it would go the other way, from you hear people talking about, I'm moving to Canada. We have not had as many Canadian immigrants moving to the U.S. in a long time. There are massive numbers of Canadians, moving to the United States. There's been a 70% spike in the last decade. And the reasons are pretty amazing because they're the very same things that we think about down here, which goes to show you no matter where you're living, everybody's got problems with something. The United States obviously is the country where most Canadian immigrants head. And their complaints range from a frustrating healthcare system, right? Got socialized medicine up there. I guess they wanted to trade a frustrating one for an utterly broken one. So, okay, welcome to the U.S. Crime, Canadian crime. I mean, Toronto is, that's their New York. And so a couple of Canadians in particular talked about moving to Florida. And there are a lot of people. It's so strange right now because the patterns aren't necessarily what you would think they would if you kind of keep your ear to the ground in this stuff, is that we're getting a lot of Canadian immigration and a lot of people who moved to Florida during the pandemic. The bloom is off the roads with that, and they're heading back because they're like, it's the Wild West down here. It's getting really expensive. Florida really prides itself on all things freedom, unless you want to read a book or have a drag lunch or anything like that. Unless you want to say gay in school, things like that.
Yeah.
You can't ask for a nicer setting.
Months into the pandemic, Dennis Cole sold his Connecticut home and, like hundreds of thousands of Americans, headed to Florida. Many drawn by the state's lower taxes and sunny skies.
It's not the panacea that I had in my head.
But now he's preparing to put his Florida house on the market and move back north.
We have political issues in Florida that are just ugly. We have costs skyrocketing.
Florida has been among the fastest growing states in the nation since the start of the pandemic. In 2022 alone, more than 700,000 people moved there. But at the same time, nearly 500,000 left, the largest number since the Great Recession. We spoke with dozens of former Florida residents who have recently left the state. Among the reasons they gave, a soaring cost of living. Florida has had one of the nation's highest rates of inflation. Last year, car insurance was up 24% and homeowners insurance jumped 42%.
And this is kind of the whole thing that surprises me is that no, it's not stopping people from going to Florida, even though there are more and more people there are insurance companies pulling out of the entire state. We're like, we're not going to insure people's homes anymore. So have fun. But it's fun to visit, but people are like, I gotta get the hell out of here. I mean, every time we go to Florida, guess what? Spoiler alert, we have a great time. We have a great time. It's like going to Texas. You have a great time.
Good place to visit.
You're like, yeah, I get it. A lot of fun. But, yeah, I don't know. Big parts of that place are going to be underwater pretty soon, too. So that guy wants to get the hell out of there and go back to Connecticut. And you understand where he's coming from. He's like, hey, man, Connecticut, I'm tired of the winters. I'm over it. But Florida, not for him. Alan, I'm a concerned Canadian. We are scared. Well, about what? Justin Trudeau? It wasn't that long ago you guys thought he was super hot and he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, that Justin Trudeau.
Time makes fools of us all.
It really does.
It does.
Yeah, you can't wait around for that. I was, Tristan Thompson plays for your Cleveland Cavaliers, and I always forget that. I have to be reminded that the guy's on the team. And I've only been half joking when I've asked if there have been Khloe Kardashian sightings, because they do have kids.
And she was at some of the games.
Was at some of the games. She was at the game you were at.
Yeah.
You took a picture
I did
of
not
her
bump
butt.
into her. No, I did not.
Oh, that wasn't your picture?
That was not my
her butt?
picture.
Oh, I see.
That would have been nice, though.
Well, she says that she's exhausted. She really wishes that he was around more because it's exhausting taking care of their children without a live-in nanny. And my question is, why doesn't she have a nanny?
Yeah.
Maybe she wants to do the mom thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody assumes because you're rich, you've got a nanny. Most of them do, probably, and you do have access to that, obviously. That is an option for you. But there's a lot of them that are like, I want to raise my own kids. And, it's not like she's got 6 of them. She's got 2 kids. I think they have 2 little girls. And she does not have a live-in nanny. And she's like, I wish he was around more. Because when he's gone, quote unquote, for work, she's like, it's the off season. What are you doing? I've got speaking engagements. What do these guys do in the off season? Train,
but also.
But he ain't here in Cleveland.
No, he's probably out in L.A.
Yeah.
Khloe, and he's probably around more during the off season.
This is why I thought it was a strange thing for her to be talking about now.
Well, maybe he's out doing other things.
Oh, boy.
I don't know, though. I don't know.
It's hard for me to leave my children, and I don't have another parent to stay with them. She couldn't go to Paris Fashion Week because she's like, what if something happens here in California while I'm in Paris?
Why don't you just take the kids to Fashion Week? Kids love fashion.
Yeah, but they're little kids, right? Like, if you're going to go to that, you want to party and you want to have fun. You don't want to be encumbered in that way. I remember when Gwen and I traveled overseas when our daughter, was it overseas? I don't remember where it might have been. It was either, I don't know. We traveled, okay? We had to get on a plane and go somewhere. When our daughter was like 6 months old. And she stayed with her grandmother, but I was like, wow, nothing happened, but in your brain you go, well, what if something happens while I'm gone? So Khloe Kardashian, maybe there will be more sightings of her in Cleveland. Maybe she'll go, I can't handle this.
Well,
I got to get back to the land. It is the land.
I don't believe he's on the team in the upcoming season. Like, I think he was on a
Isn't
one-year
he still
deal.
on? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, then what's his excuse?
I don't know. He's trying to
go back to Sacramento.
I don't know where he's going to end up. Yeah, I don't know why he's not hanging out with his kids.
All right. Well, I don't know either. That's their business. But it is, you see it all the time. It's a cliche at this point. Celebrities are just like us. Just like us. You don't have a live-in nanny.
No.
I don't have a live-in nanny. And neither does she.
Yeah, he was just on a one-year contract, so he may or may not be back next year, but my guess is he will probably not be back.
One person texted me that he does train in the off season, but with females only.
Oh,
I mean, I don't want to
like it.
Allegedly,
Okay.
I can't tell tales out of school. That's not my place.
But he's not. They're not together romantically. They're just trying to raise kids together. So I feel like you could be a dad during the day and be a dog during the night.
Oh, baby, the sun's going down. I got to get out of here. Yeah. Oh. Boys becoming men. Men becoming wolves. That's right. Al, we just took our 8-month-old to Portugal for 2 weeks. She had such a good time.
I should remember it forever.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you know if your 8-month-old had a good time? You fed her and changed her and didn't drop her on her head. It was a total success. Yeah.
Well, good for you guys.
Yeah, congratulations. You know how Lisbon loves small children. I've got to take a break here. You want to send a text, 35192. Watch live if you want at alancoxshow.com, and we'll be back.
It's the Alan Cox Show on 100.7